I'd love to hear more about the 1988 team at the Giro that won, the role you played and what it was like to be a part of a winning team.
Well, they were not thrilled that we were in the 85 Giro. They were way less thrilled that we were about to win the 88 Giro. And the Italian peloton hadn't evolved in, our two participations, much to my chagrin. The main thing is we had to race the whole peloton by ourselves. They were like, okay, these dudes are losing. That's it.
Everybody was against you.
These guys are going to lose. That's what they decided. And we decided, no, we're not going to lose. We're going to win. So it was us guys, our little group, our little family, Raul Alcala, Delgado Lauritsen, Jens Vegerby, Roy Nickman, Ron Kiefel, Jeff Pierce, Davis Finney, Andy Hampton, and myself. It was us against the world. And so every day, every single day, they tested us. They pushed us. They attacked us in the feed zone when we stopped to take a nature break, when the weather is bad, when we went to get a rain jacket. They just en masse would attack.
Does that still go on?
No, I haven't seen that. It's too international now because the level is so much more important and worldwide and well known. The struggles are the same, but riders go for not to race against somebody as much as they used to. Greg LeMond faced this a lot. He took on the whole peloton by himself for a long time. Even his own teammates raced against him sometimes.
Did you find yourself, even though you weren't on his team, fellow American, in the peloton helping him?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How?
I helped him all the time, as much as I could. Mostly it was just encouragement from the cheap seats. Go Greg, kill him! Tactically
though, like strategically, do you remember one time when you really helped him?
One time in the Tour, I'll tell you, I and Davis Finney saved his Tour de France because he got the same bug I got a few days later, this amoebic dysentery where your bowels just let loose, and that happened in the middle of a race, 40 Ks to go, and we're going flat out for the stage win. And his bowels just exploded. And he, fever, like you can only imagine. You're on your deathbed, except you're in the middle of the Tour de France. So he started drifting back through the field, and he couldn't sit on the wheel. I went off the back when he went off the back, and there was one time when they were flat out, lined out in the gutter, and he got dropped. And I went back, and Davis went back, and we came back to the back of the field with Greg on our wheel. His teammates, they were doing the attacking. I did a little bit, then Davis did the rest to get Greg back into the field. And that was just like, it was a tiny little effort, but if he had been cast adrift off the back of the peloton, he might not have been able to make it.
Has he ever expressed gratitude for that?
I'm sure he remembers the episode of becoming unwell in the middle of a Tour de France stage, but how it played out from that point. In all honesty, he had a moment that lasted, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 kilometers out of 4,000 kilometers. That was really tough. The rest of the stage, believe me, he was in the front duking it out.
Right.
He was right there, but that one moment, and he wasn't on our team. We didn't have to do that, but, I just felt for the guy.
Right. Yeah, good move. 1986, start of the tour, you had this famous line you said, "We're cavemen."
Oh, yeah.
We're bad to the bone.
We're cavemen, what can I say? We're bad to the bone. At least the first day. We'll see the rest of the race how it goes.
At that time, there hadn't been, for many, many decades, a famous American cyclist. At the turn of the century, we had a lot of famous cyclists. We had the best cyclists in the world. Major Taylor, probably the best cyclist in the world in the years just before the Tour de France got started. So then there was this long interval where there was almost no information about cycling. And so in '86, all of a sudden, we had a guy that could win the Tour, Greg LeMond, who had been 3rd in '84 and 2nd in '85. And his battle with Bernard Hinault in the '85 Tour was very gripping. So it had gotten a lot of attention in the United States. So in '86, I wanted to just say in a way, my own way, that there's more than one American in the Tour that you're going to be hearing from us. I was right about that, and that that Davis Finney won the third stage actually, and we had gotten the yellow jersey with Alex Steeda on the first day of the race. And they were like, what in the hell? That interview was before the team time trial, when we completely fell apart. Mm-hmm. The problem was Alex got the jersey in the morning, and the team time trial, 80Ks, was in the afternoon, which they don't do that anymore. There's not split stages in Grand Tours. And we just were, you know, you can't imagine how bad you feel to have to race flat out in the morning and then do another race. We were not ready for that. So the team time trial was bad. Next day, Davis won the stage. So I was like, I told you. Right? We are cavemen. And it's something that our team doctor had told us, Massimo Testa. He said, you guys, and he's from Italy, you know, had a real thick Italian accent in those days. You're like the Cro-Magnons. You can walk across looking for food all day. You don't even get tired. You're like the cavemen. So I use that from Massimo.
France, you know it well because of riding in the Tour. But as I got to know you, it was interesting to find out that you were familiar with that country from childhood trips before you became an international cyclist.
Yeah, my parents were intellectual bohemians, and my dad loved France, loved French culture, but mostly loved French wine. So we would take trips, the lowest budget trips. I mean, there was a series of books in those days, France on $5 a day. We were France, family of 6 on 37 cents per day. That was
Really?
They were so monumental. Like, believe me, nobody was taking the whole family for summer vacation to Europe and just going crazy. And when they went to Bordeaux and Champagne and Burgundy and the Rhone, and you know, we just hung out in the vineyards. We ate the grapes that weren't ripe yet, so we all got sick as dogs, you know.
A lot of sickness in France for you.
I'm allergic to France, apparently.
Are those trips, is that where you started? I know you were younger, but your love of wine right now?
I think so, even though I was resistant, because whatever your parents are interested in, you think is stupid.
Right.
You know.
Your parents owned a wine shop, correct?
My dad opened a wine shop in like 1973. Okay. Just as a side.
Back home in the Bay Area?
Yeah, in the Diablo Valley. Maybe the first, you know, French wine shop in that part of the country.
But somewhere along the line, whether it was those trips when you were a kid or the fact that your dad tried to start that business, you developed a love of it and a real knowledge. I mean, Bob's the kind of guy, if you're lucky enough, like you go to dinner, you don't have to worry about ordering the wine because Bob knows what the best one is on the list. So
for the money.
Exactly. What's the wine cellar at your house look like?
Oh, man, I have some of the best wine ever made in my wine cellar. And my house in Durango's cut into the hill behind it. And the garage is under the house, and it's just a nice, you know, natural, stays cool all summer, nice natural cellar. So I have champagne, a lot of Burgundy. I started getting into white wines more, so a lot of California big cabs that I have on hold. I just opened a 97 Opus, good year from California, and now just starting to get ready to drink. I had bought some, knowing it was a good year, but I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to wait a while.
Between all those trips as a kid to France, between riding internationally when you were competitive and covering the Tour as a commentator, how many times have you been to France?
Oh my gosh. I mean, every year since, sometimes 2 or 3 times per year for 40 years, so hundreds of times.
Okay. So
still working on the language.
You seem like you're pretty good at it to me.
I can get by, but I'm still working on it.
This transition, when a professional athlete knows he or she is near the end and they're looking for the next challenge, maybe they're looking for a soft place to land, many of them end up in broadcasting, and I think a lot of them realize this is a lot harder than I thought. It's going to take a lot more prep than I thought. How did the transition happen for you?
Well, the stories that I wrote, you know, because of what we mentioned before, like not having any internet, you know, just you're over there in a vacuum doing something spectacular nobody back home ever hears about. I started to write stories and send them to Velo News, which was covering the sport, like the only publication. OLN had gotten the rights to the Tour, and they were looking for a commentator. And Phil and Paul, obviously, had been doing the heavy lifting for many years. And they're like, well, let's get an American guy in there, get the American perspective. It was Susan DiMattei, actually, who was working for them, who had gotten a bronze medal in the first mountain bike Olympics in Atlanta and was commentating on the mountain bike races for OLN. And she said, if you guys want somebody to talk about the sport, you got to go and meet Bob Roll.
What year was this?
98. And I was starting to wind down my racing career, planning the next phase, which was working at the lumber mill in Durango.
Really?
Was my plan. And my daughter was, a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, this is great. No problem. I can pay my mortgage. And Durango is not, it's a working class place. There's, if you dress up, you feel bad.
What was your first on-air assignment?
First on-air assignment, World Championships.
In?
38 hours live in Mont Saint Anne, Canada, with Susan DiMattei and Davis Finney.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
Were you good at it?
Well, I was good at telling stories, and I would do a whole segment, and the producer would be like, I'm talking. You're not talking, I'm talking. It's my turn to talk. We're going to commercial break. I would just bleed right into the commercial break, do the commercials. They come back. I'm still telling the same story when they come back from commercials. And the guy was like, you idiot! Commercial break. I'm like, you can have a commercial. I'm telling a story.
Yeah.
And Davis Finney and Susan DiMattei were sitting next to me, and Peter Young was the host. And we had the best time. I just couldn't, the technical part of it.
How long did moments like that go on?
3 or 4 years.
At what point did you figure out, okay, I'm going to play ball with the truck, I'm going to stop talking when they want me to, but yet I'm still going to be me and tell my stories? How long did it take to get to that point?
Yeah, they fired me for the tournament here.
Really? Because of what?
I was like, I know this sport. I want to tell the sport how I want to tell it. And I hadn't understood that I need to fit it in to the medium, to the vernacular. And so they're like, this dude's got to cool his jets for a year. He's like totally out of control.
What'd you do that year?
Well,
Lumberyard?
No, I don't know. I was shell-shocked because the tour is going on and I wasn't there. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch a lot of that tour?
I did watch as much as I could.
Did you find yourself paying really close attention to the announcers?
Yeah, I was listening to how they transition to the commercial breaks, how they come out of them, who they're engaging with, what they're talking about. And that was actually very instructive. So when I came back, it was a totally different level. And so the challenge of the tour is to constantly, for everybody, not just the riders, but for everybody in a professional bike race, you're constantly solving problems. This rider's moving up, these guys have just attacked, there's a hill coming up, the wind's coming from here. So you just develop this ability to solve problems. I don't know if there's anything else like it in sports television.
Big change for you this year, huge change for all of us. For the first time, you're going to be over there without Paul Sherwin. Tragically passed away in early December. We've talked about it a number of ways, a number of times since. Let's back up and let everybody know when you two became close, when you really became buddies with Paul.
Yeah, I started working with Paul right after that first event for OLN, and we had known each other, racing against each other. I met him in 1987 at the Tour of Britain. The first thing I said to him, I said, "You are an incendiary device." And
Why'd you say that to him?
Why?
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a second. And he said, "That's a pretty big word for a seppo." And I knew what a seppo was, right?
What is it?
It's rhyming slang for a septic tank that rhymes with yank. So it's an American is a seppo, a septic tank.
Wow.
So he came back with a response. I was like, well, that's a pretty good response. I thought I was the most lucid person in this event. So I was like, this is a dude to be reckoned with. But he was attacking at the worst possible moment the whole week of racing, and I just got tired of it. Who's this dude? I didn't even know what he was wearing. You know, that I had to ask Sean Kelly, the great Irishman.
Yeah.
I'm like, who's this guy? He's like, that's Climber, huh? And that was Paul Sherwin's nickname. Climber, because he couldn't climb, so they called him Climber. Of course. Of course. And he had a white jersey with a red and blue stripe, and on the back it said Banana. That was his team sponsor, Raleigh Banana, And he was the national road racing champion at the time of England, so his jersey was different from everybody else's, but I couldn't put two and two together. I thought he was just some highball, some privateer, some sort of swashbuckling lunatic that attacked at the wrong time every time. And so and when he said that, that's a big word for a sapao. I'm like, I didn't have anything. So I'm like, I'm going to show you the wrong time to attack. So the next day I went bananas, shredded the field, pulled my foot out of the pedal with 50 meters to go when I was in front of the race about to win.
Bob Roll goes on the left there. Oh, and Roll pulled his foot off the pedal. Oh, Roll has lost the stage by he's pulled his foot off the pedal. Quite honestly, that's telling me he's absolutely fuming, and I'm not surprised.
The only guy in the field that could stay on my wheel was Paul Hagedorn. He passed me when my chain came off. So I threw my bike up in the air, and I just this blood-curdling scream across the empty pitch into the grandstands where the Royals were, and they had stopped the bagpipe music for a moment. And Phil was, he's commentating live, the first day of live TV for a race in England in the history of British TV, and that's the first word they hear at the finish line.
Well, Bob, what a personal disaster. You had that race won.
Yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes.
And so Paul was like, I told you. Paul Sherwood, he fell in love with me right at that moment. And he told me all of the implications for years and years and years after that. And so that's when we met.
Yeah.
So the next time I saw him, he was the press agent for the Motorola cycling team. So he's like, oh no, this is going to be a challenge. I have to guide Bob Roll through the labyrinth of political correctness, and which he did do very well. And he explained to me, these are the stakes. This is what's important. And then I understood, okay, I could be an adult about all this and still have fun.
I got a phone call from Steve Doherty, I'd worked with for years before that, and he'd worked for Channel 4. And he said, oh, what about this Bob Roll character? I said, well, Steve, I mean, that's what you get when you work with somebody who's got a personality. And his response was, a personality? He said, everybody's got a fucking personality. But Bob Rolls is fucking defective.
Then we started working together on TV, and it was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
We both tried to tear every city down we were in brick by brick, and every speakeasy, every honky-tonk, every after-hours play. He was so good at telling stories, the best.
Yeah.
And so it was a real shock and I'm still starting to realize, what it's been very challenging to move forward without him, really hard.
There was a time, it was in between when Paul died early December and Christmas, you and I talked.
Oh
and
man, that was... You felt
weren't-
for my safety, I think, which I apologize for.
No. It's what friends do. And I hung up the phone because you had said so. I was thinking Bob might not go back.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to go back and do this.
I went there and have been there ever since, was how strongly I believe in what this event means to people in their day-to-day life. And also Paul would be disappointed if I wasn't there. He'll be there in spirit. So if I'm not there and he's there in spirit, there would be an empty place at the table.
Well, it's a nice look at the Chateau de Beauvau, Crayon.
It's got 365 windows for the days of the year, 52 fireplaces for the weeks of the year, 12 towers for the months of the year, and guess what? It's got 4 bridges for each different season. How about that?
I'm very impressed.
I got you there.
I am very impressed.
One of Paul's special abilities was that when they would show one of the landmarks along the race course, he would have done the research and be able to share the history of that and how the event is not in a stadium. It's out where people live. And that's one of the most special parts about Tour de France and all bike races, is that you're in the community. And for that short, brief moment, you're a part of the community. And the people that live there are sharing that with the world. And so our job is to engage those scenics and what they mean to the people and what they mean to the world. Paul was able to integrate those and weave this tapestry that would just unfold infinitely towards the horizon. And he had such a special ability to do that seamlessly, smoothly, in a way that people would not forget what they're doing, not forget why they're racing, but also enjoy the stadium, which is the most spectacular. You can't deny. You know, people argue about the merits of sports, but the stadium that cycling has is the greatest on the planet. There's no question about that.
You have an outstanding vocabulary that's got these Bobisms in there.
Heaven forbid you fall on the cobbles. It's like a meat grinder being dragged across your body. The descent, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. Every inch of road is going to be taken up by bloodthirsty lunatics.
I try to put words together that don't exist, but they encapsulate the meanings of multiple things. So it infuriates people when you do that, because there's no such word. So English majors are always writing in like, Bob Roll is a moron.
Give me one. Give me a couple.
Conflagration.
Means?
A conflagration is, if I'm not mistaken, because I've mixed them up so many times, is like a fire, something that is like a catalyst. And I decided that it should also be a conjugatable verb. So I started saying, well, in order to conflagrate this situation, what you need to do is attack with 3 Ks to go from it. And that's not a word.
No.
But I thought, as being an incendiary device myself, that would be a good way to explain things.
One thing I've learned in my time working in cycling next to you is that cycling as a sport is a very passionate fan base, almost a cult-like following, and a lot of that applies to you as well because of the way you tell stories and because of your background. It was fun. It's been fun for me driving around France, listening to them in real time, but the last hour has been fun listening to you as well. So thanks for sharing, Bob.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.